Sentire Media.
This episode is brought to you by the Smart Move Italy app, your free tool for planning, moving, and thriving in Italy. Download it today on iOS and Android. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of New Life in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today's episode is one of those conversations that I know is going to stick with you for a long time, because we're talking about something that every single one of us has said at some point, and that is that we never have enough time. I'm sitting down with an international time management specialist, best-selling author, and a true life designer, Kate Christie. And this is not just a conversation about productivity, it's about ownership and choices, about taking back your calendar, your energy, and your life. You see, Kate walked away from the corporate world and she built something completely on her own terms. And now she helps women uncover more than 30 hours of guilt-free time every single month. My goodness, what I could do with 30 hours of extra time. But this is time that they didn't think existed. Time that they now use to write books or launch businesses, start a new chapter, and finally say yes to the things that matter the most. And what I love about this conversation is that it's not theoretical. Kate actually lives what she teaches. You see, she bought and is renovating a palazzo in Sicily as her next chapter. And she's creating what she calls an eternal summer between Australia and Italy. It is intentional, and it's a reminder that time is not something that we manage. It's something that we design around the life that we want. So if you have ever said, I just don't have the time, or now's not the moment, this episode might lovingly challenge that belief. Are you ready? Let's get started. I'm Samantha Wilson, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show for people who love Italy and are quietly trying to figure out what it would really take to build a life here. We talk honestly about the practical choices, the emotional shifts, and the parts of this journey that don't always get talked about, so that you can move forward feeling informed, grounded, and more confident. If you're somewhere between dreaming and doing, you are in exactly the right place. Now, let's get into today's show. Well, hello, Kate. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Samantha. I am delighted.
So tell us a little bit more about you and what you're doing, where you are right now. Let's start with that.
Yeah, so I'm in Melbourne, Australia at the moment. We are in summer, so that's very much where I like to be.
Nice.
And what's happening at the moment is we're managing a long distance renovation between here and Sicily, working hard in Melbourne and working with my clients on time management, also life design, and making sure that I have the time I need to live my best life too.
Yeah, well, I found you actually on Instagram because, of course, I'm doom scroll sometimes, looking at all of those amazing renovations that I watch people do. And I want to talk about your palazzo in Sicily, but I want to talk about it in a different frame, not just what you're doing to renovate, but how your palazzo is actually, you're thinking of it as your case study to, what you're doing and your change of what, the change in the time management that you talk about. So before we get there, let's just back up just a minute. And I want to talk a little bit about what your expertise is, because that's what's led you to where you are now. And I know you've said that we can't manage time. We can only invest it. So what do you really mean by that in practice?
Well, look, in terms of my expertise, I was trained and worked for many years as a lawyer and absolutely hated every second of it. But I think that learning as a lawyer sets you up really well for the rest of your life and any sort of job that you do. It teaches you a way of thinking. And I ultimately opted out of my corporate kind of career. I had 3 little children. I had 3 babies in 3.5 years, which was entirely my own fault. And that whole crazy juggle just became
Yeah.
phenomenally hard to sustain. And,
Mhm.
I'd been brought up, raised by, two feminists. My mum and dad were both, very much, you can do anything you want as long as you set your
Mhm.
mind to it. And it wasn't until I had my first child that I really sort of faced any hurdle, because I'd always been raised with this: if you work hard and you are resilient and you've got grit and determination and you set your goals, you can have whatever you want. And it worked really
Right.
well for me. And
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I had those three babies in 3.5 years that the wheels just, they didn't even wobble. They literally fell off. And
Right.
I ultimately opted out of my amazing career because I felt like I had no choice. I'd backed myself into a corner where I felt like I could choose to be a great mum or have a brilliant career. And I chose the kids, of course, but it wasn't until I opted out and I spent a lot of time redesigning my time that I realized that, I'd made a mistake. I didn't have to have it all. I didn't have to do it all. I certainly didn't have to be it all. And I made some very conscious decisions and choices about time and became very, very good at investing my time. So much so that I, started writing about it for other women. And
Right.
that's really where it took off. From my first book was called Me Time,
Mhm.
and the subheading title was "The Guilt-Free Guide to Finding 30 Hours of Lost Time a Month," and it
Right.
became a bestseller because there were so many other professional and business women who were struggling like I had been.
And I think that this is, I mean, we obviously know if it was a bestseller and people are talking about this, especially women, we do have a lot of other things that we, whether or not we take these decisions or these responsibilities on ourselves, but we do tend to do that. The kids, the work, the house, the life, the dreams, all of it has to be managed together. And often what we do is we just say we wait, or we say we'll do that later. And I know that
Mhm.
when we're talking about Italy and people thinking about redesigning their new life and their new chapter here in Italy, this is something that comes up all the time. So, how do you help people shift that mindset from saving this dream of a new life later for future, but living it fully now? How do you help people shift their mind?
Well, look, I came to that shift myself through, personal tragedy. So I was, a time management productivity expert, and I work with high achieving teams, high performing teams and individuals to help them get their time under control. But I
Mhm.
really hadn't taken that next step in terms of, well, now you've got your time back, what are you going to do with it? And
Yeah.
in and I came to that through family tragedy in the year 2020. Obviously, the world went into lockdown with COVID, and my partner, my husband of 22 years, had left our marriage 2 years before that, and
Mm.
that was a really, really hard time for me and my family, and coming to terms with sort of rewriting the future and the narrative. We'd had plans and they were suddenly
Yeah.
gone. You have it's not just your current life that ends when your partner leaves, it's your future as well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we then went into COVID, and right after COVID, the lockdowns in Melbourne started, and we were really locked up in Melbourne for a long time.
Yeah.
My husband reached out and he said, "Look, I need to come over and see you and the kids." And he came over and he told us that he'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer,
Oh,
and
no.
uh, and 11 months later he had died,
Mm.
and he was only 54. And
Oh, my goodness.
that process of watching my kids watch their dad die, when we knew that there was never ever going to be a happy ending to that story, was just phenomenally devastating. And and it continues to be that way. It's
Yeah.
six
Oh,
years
it's
now
so
since he was diagnosed, 5 years since he passed away. And but what I guess that really, really sort of brought home to me was this concept that life is too short. And it's
Mhm.
trite. We say it, But I'd always said it things like, oh, life's too short, I'm going to eat a donut. And,
Yeah.
life's too short, I'm
That's
going to
right.
have a
I'm going
sleep
out
in.
tonight. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it was this reality that life is too short. When he was sick, he wanted to take the boys on a deep sea fishing trip. But, Melbourne was in lockdown, and then they had this
Right.
tiny window when it was open, but he couldn't fly because he had blood clots. And then he
Right.
wanted to take the kids down the coast, and he booked this beautiful holiday house, but it was a 4-hour drive from Melbourne, and the hospital, wouldn't let him be that far away. And all of these doors kept closing on him. And after he'd left our marriage, Samantha, he didn't prioritize his kids, and he wasn't a great dad. But
Mhm.
that 11 months after his diagnosis, he was a fantastic dad, and he
Right.
did everything with them, and he was constantly with them. And it was just a real awakening for me that, that life is too short, that we can't put stuff off till later. Later might be too late.
And we tend
And
to put right, and we tend to put things off until something tragic actually makes us
yeah,
make a decision. And the
yeah,
idea is, why are we waiting for something horrible to happen for us to do what we really want to do?
exactly, exactly. And a couple of months after he passed away, I wrote an article. I'm an opinion columnist for CEO World Magazine in the US, and I wrote an article. And I'm supposed to be writing for them about productivity and time management.
Yeah.
I wrote an article. Life's too short, and I'm changing the way I manage it. And the article was along the lines of, my partner, my children's father, has died. He was 54. Here's what I'm going to do differently. And I had sort of these dot points of, I'm going to tell my kids I love them every single day, even when they're shitting
Yeah.
me, and I'm going to swear more, and I'm going to vacuum less. And I had this kind of long list, and
Yeah.
I thought, look, they're not going to publish it, but 4 hours later, it was on their front page, and it
Mhm.
just went viral. And I had people writing to me from all around the world saying, I love your list. I want your list. Can I write
Yeah.
my own list? And it just became really apparent to me that, and I think COVID sort of bought into that as well, that people were reassessing their lives, people were reframing. I certainly was. And so
Right.
I used that opportunity to write my fifth book, which is called The Life List. And
Yes.
the concept is that it's the exact opposite of a bucket list. A bucket list is, what do I want to do before I die? And a
Yeah.
life list is, well, what do I want to do right now while I'm still young enough to live it and love it and enjoy it?
I
And
love it.
and
It's because it's so forward thinking too, right? You're thinking about the future. It leans into that. I'm not waiting for something horrible to happen. This is how I want to live my life.
Yeah, it's to your point. Like, let's not wait for tragedy to snap us out of our malaise. Let's make decisions right now, actively and intentionally. What do you most want to do with your life?
Mm.
And, so I wrote this big life list. I wrote a framework for how to make your own life list, and things in my life list, which I wrote at the back of the book, things like, I want to move to Italy, and I want to learn to surf, and I want to be a digital nomad in Bali, and I want to, all these things I wanted to do. I wanted to find new love. And I was
Yeah.
very purposeful and wrote very, very specifically
Mhm.
around what each of these things would look like for me. And there's hundreds of them in there. And
I know
I
that.
now systematically deliver on them.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, it's one thing to think about it and write a list and say I'm going to do and be and have all of these things that I really want in my life, but everything, it's easy for life to get in the way of taking that next step and marking those life list items off. What do you have to do that? I mean, how do you get beyond that wall that most women face?
Yeah, it's partly it's intentionality. It's
Mm.
actually making sure, and this is where the time management piece comes in. It's making sure you implement all those time management lessons I teach you around, batching time in your diary to do these things and to plan them out. And it's about, using and having these as a priority. It's about understanding what you most value so that you can say no to all the
Mhm.
multitude of requests that come your way that take your time. Uh,
Mhm.
then it's not just about saying, oh, well, gee, I'm moving to Italy. It's about making sure that you embrace 3 different types of goals in your life. The 3 goals that you need to go after first is the go big goals. So the I want to buy a palazzo and renovate it type goals,
Right.
which you might have one of those a year. The
Mhm.
second are the go small goals. So the monthly goals that kind of keep your momentum up and keep your
Right.
cup filled. So whilst I'm trying to move to Italy and renovate a palazzo on a monthly basis, I might say, well, I'm going to read 3 books and I'm going to
Mhm.
walk 10,000 steps a day and I'm going to speak to 3 strangers a week. And
Mhm.
and so you set those smaller goals that just keep you moving forward. And then the
Right.
third type of goal, which is really hard for me, are the go now goals, the acts of spontaneity, where someone says, "Hey, let's go jump out of a plane tomorrow," or let's
Mhm.
do something crazy, or let's do this right now.
Yeah.
Um, you need those as well because they add an element of spontaneity and
Mhm.
of joy to your goal seeking.
Right, and help maybe reduce the fear that could be holding you back to making your other goal choices or goal decisions,
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely.
I l
When it comes to goal setting, one of the things I talk about in the book is is you think about Newton's 3 laws, and the first law, the law of inertia, um,
Mhm.
which I call the law of what's on Netflix,
Mm.
is an object at rest stays at rest.
Yeah.
Now we are objects, and if we're at rest, if you're sitting on the couch, you're going to stay sitting on the couch. In order for you to smash your goals out, you have to be in motion. An object,
Right.
because the second law is an object in motion stays in motion. We're objects, so we have to be in motion. We have to be moving in order to achieve our goals.
Mm.
And so we can't just be sort of sitting there on the couch, thinking, "Oh, geez, I wish," or "I'll do it later." We
Mhm.
have to be in motion.
Right. I read somewhere, I don't even remember who or where I saw it, but, when you're in that stuck point, right, where you're just sitting on the couch and you just can't do what you wanna do it for just 10 minutes. Whatever it is you think you need to do, just start, right? Just do it for a little bit and then you're in motion exactly as you've
Yeah.
described and then you just continue to keep. And I love these different kinds of goals that you have because they also give you those little wins because if you never win, if you just go after the great big goals, they take so long and they feel
Yeah, that's
too
it.
big and you've got to win a little bit to feel like you're continuing to move forward. And that's why I want to also talk to you about because I think, like you said, this palazzo in Sicily was one of your go big goals.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It
So,
and before, if you don't mind, before I'd love to just add to your comment about if you just don't know where to start or you can't start, just do something for 10 minutes. The
okay.
first 5 steps of my framework in the book are 90 seconds. So you don't even have to do something for 10 minutes. You can
Mm,
take 90 seconds
mhm,
to kickstart your forward momentum
mhm.
into creating your goal.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
and
good.
look, I can take you through it right now if you want. We've got 90 seconds, and it's
Okay,
something that your
let's do it.
listeners can do. Okay, so you we'll do it with you doing it, but your listeners can do this as we're talking.
Okay,
So
okay.
step one is you have to set an intention. So I want you to take 10 seconds to set a new kind of intention, a mindset. This is not the goal. This is a new mindset. So, for example, mine might be for 2026. Well, it's my turn.
Mhm,
So, or
mhm.
it's all about me, or this is going to make me happy. So you set an intention. So take 10 seconds now, Samantha, and then set the intention. You can share with us what it is.
Oh, oh, I have to share it. Okay. Okay, my intention, a 10-second intention. Okay, my intention is to be more in the moment. Is that too
Beautiful.
general?
No, no, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a perfect intention. All right, so
Okay.
you've set that. Now you get 10 seconds and you're going to choose one go big goal. So something that's kind of been floating around on your mind for a while. You
Mhm.
think, God, I'd love to do that. Take 10 seconds and your listeners can take 10 seconds right now. What's your go? What's the goal going to be?
I would love to. Oh, this is not easy for me because I'm very spontaneous, Kate, and I tend to
Ah,
do
okay.
everything that in my head, which is one of the reasons I need to be more present because I'm always off doing something else. What do I want to do that is a big goal? I mean, this sounds really silly, but I would like to redo my garden up on my terrace. It's a big goal for
Perfect.
me. It's a major thing for me to
Yeah.
do. I never have the time.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right. Now you've already forecasted in saying that you've already forecasted step 3. Step 3 is what often happens is we set goals and it sounds exciting or interesting or compelling for a period of time, but then the very next thing that happens is our brain tells us all the reasons why we can't.
Hmm.
So I want to
Yeah.
buy a house in Palazzo, and my brain will say, "Well, how much is it going to cost? I don't speak Italian. What are the property laws? What are the tax laws? Am I going to be able to trust anybody?" And
Hmm.
your brain tells you all the reasons why you can't, and so you don't. And those
Yeah.
two types of reasons are going to be fear and lack. There's going to be things that you fear and things you
Hmm.
lack. And you've already mentioned a lack. Straight away, you said, "Oh, it's something I want to do, but I don't have time."
Hmm. Yeah.
So in terms of, get your list, and we won't do this now because it'll be take too long, but you take 30 seconds and you come up with all the things that you fear and lack that are going to stop you achieving
Hmm.
that goal of doing your garden. So, well, I don't have time. How much is it going to cost? It's kind of the middle of winter. Will any of the
Hmm.
plants survive?
I
I'm not
kill
a gardener.
everything.
I'm not a
Yeah.
keeper. I kill everything.
Yeah.
Um, what if I spend all this money and everything dies? What if I'm not there to water it? So we have
Yeah.
all these reasons and then we don't.
Yeah.
But we have to understand what those blockers are before we move forward. Step
Hmm.
4 is then you work out, you take 30 seconds to identify what it is you most value in your life. What do I most
Hmm.
value? Now, yours might be, well, I value beauty and I value being outside and I value color and I value flowers and birds and
Hmm.
springtime and I value being able to sit out on my terrace and having a glass of wine with my family or my friends. And so,
Hmm.
all of those things, you list everything that you value, and all of a sudden they feel so much more powerful than what you're worried about. And
Hmm.
then your final step, you take 10 seconds and you set yourself a deadline. You say, okay, well, I'm going to have my garden built by the 10th of July, 2026. Now,
Mm.
there is so much power in deadlines. And
Oh,
this
I
is a
know. I
time
love it.
management piece.
Yeah.
Parkinson's law says a task will expand to fill the time made available for it. So if we don't set a deadline on our
Yeah.
goals, we are not going to do them. So
I
you
so
have to
believe
deadline
that.
everything.
Yeah. I actually tell people when we talk about them, when they call us, want to plan their move to Italy, is I always say you have to pick a date. What is your anticipated arrival date? I call it here in Italy. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, maybe next summer in the fall. No, I want a date. Okay, well, September. I want a date. Pick an actual date in your mind. You're moving on September the 2nd, 2026, and put it in your calendar and write it on the wall and tell your friends and do whatever you need to do because it becomes real, doesn't it? And then you have something to work
Absolutely.
towards.
Yeah, and you're accountable,
Yeah.
it's meaty and it's real. Now, those are 5 steps that can kickstart anybody
Yeah.
towards their new goal, and they take 90 seconds.
And I think all of this, what you're saying there, that's really powerful. And what you're saying is these are new tools that people that feel a bit lost or feel like they're just on a wheel can
Mm,
use in their everyday life to help them move forward, not just in circles.
exactly, and they're simple and
Yeah.
they just
Achievable.
will they're achievable, because the whole thing comes down to moments. You don't want to think of the big goal as, well, I want to move to Italy. It just feels enormous. It feels too big. It
Hmm.
feels too impossible. So we have to break it down into little moments. And
Yeah.
one of the word moment is a homonym. So it has 3 different definitions. And the first is that a moment is a unit of time. It's actually 90 seconds. So
Hmm.
just like a minute is 60 seconds, a moment is 90 seconds. So we can
Hmm.
leverage moments. We can just take 90 seconds
Yeah.
to spend on our goals. And that
Yeah.
keeps us moving forward.
Hmm. Hmm. So tell me, I'm dying to hear about how you use this plan and these moments to get you to the point of having a palazzo in Sicily. And like I said at the beginning, is using it as almost the foundation of what you really believe and what you teach, and that your life is. I know there's a quote that you said, is you said that a palazzo is the case study and your life is the project.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
So
it.
it's really just to demonstrate that we can all do this.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean that everyone has to go and buy a palazzo, though most of your clients probably do.
Yeah.
It's more that we all have palazzo-sized goals, and
Hmm.
they're very, very achievable. So the the book has a 15-step process or framework that I encourage people to follow to actually achieve any goal that they want. And those
Hmm.
first five steps that I just took you through, I've actually developed a Palazzo blueprint for those. So if anybody wants that later, I can send you the link, Samantha, and you can put it in the case notes and
Perfect.
in
Yes.
the
Yeah.
file notes. But I used those exact first five steps to kickstart our hunt for Palazzo in Italy.
Wonderful.
The intention was, well, it's my turn.
Hmm.
I'd spent 26 years raising my kids and being pretty much a single mum for a lot of that, and prioritizing them and work, and so my intention was that it was my turn. The goal was to find a palazzo in Sicily. The
Okay.
fears were things like I mentioned, I don't speak Italian, how much it was going to cost us, how we're going to find builders. But the three
Hmm.
things I most value are my kids, my family, and this was going to be somewhere where we could spend beautiful times together.
Hmm.
My business, well, this has given me a whole framework to write about and to
Right.
share,
Yeah.
and my health and well-being. And look, I'm going to be living between Australia and Sicily and chasing the sun. And what could be better for your health and well-being?
Sure.
And so then we set a
Sure.
deadline. So this time last year, February 2025, we set ourselves a deadline. We flew to Sicily for 9 days with the intention of finding our place. And
Hmm.
when you set a hard deadline like that, and you're flying across to the other side of the world, you've got, you've
And
got
you're
to do it.
intentional. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you did. Where did you find your palazzo? Where is it?
It's in Elcamo in Sicily,
Hmm. Okay. So
and it's
whereabouts
just
is that in
beautiful.
Sicily? Is that east, west,
Northwest.
northwest?
Northwest.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's sort of to the west of Palermo. It's just beautiful.
Nice. Gorgeous. I know on your Insta, which is how I first learned about you and the work and what you do. And I know yet you're chronicling. Is it chronicling? Am I using the right word? Chronicling? The your renovation or your process of
Oh,
you know,
chronicling.
chronicling your
Yeah.
process of this. It's early, and I'm still a little doped up from COVID. I will tell you that. So so you're helping, you're sharing with everyone your process in obviously renovating this palazzo, but also what this palazzo is unfolding and what it's turning into, which isn't, like you said, it isn't just a building in a beautiful part of Sicily. It's kind of, the foundation of your change.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like my midlife reinvention, if you like.
Yeah.
It's this beautiful metaphor for reinventing yourself. And I write and talk a lot about midlife, and
Mhm.
I sort of still claim I'm midlife. I'm 55, but I get some people write to me saying, "You're hardly midlife.
Yeah.
You're old." It's like,
Oh, I thought you were gonna
thanks,
say
guys.
that's nice. Well, in
Oh,
Italy,
I go,
55, you could be midlife, right? If you're living
yeah,
well in Sicily.
exactly.
Who says you
Yeah,
can't live to
yeah.
200, right?
I know. I know. So, I write a lot about, women of our age and our era, and the power we have to master and our reinvention, and to create our next chapter and our next life, and to continue to reinvent ourselves. And
Mhm.
it's such a powerful metaphor for what I'm doing with this palazzo, this complete reinvention, this reinvigoration, and saying, well, this is what I'm going to do with my life, and I'm going to move there, and I'm going to learn Italian, and I'm going to
Mhm.
follow the sun, and I'm going to write about it and share it and really lean into this period of time, which I find so joyful. And
Yeah.
I guess in tandem with sort of sharing the Palazzo stories, my passion and my drive to inspire other women to live their best lives. And that
Hmm.
doesn't mean you have to buy a palazzo. It just means you have to work out what's most important to you and design it and start living it right now.
Yeah, and I think also giving yourself permission to do that.
Yeah.
You know? I think that
Yeah.
you have to allow yourself, uh, to pursue your dreams and say it's okay, and you're not being selfish, and you're not ignoring the people that you love. It actually can be really quite healing for everyone and make your whole family and everyone in your whole circle grow at the same time that you grow. And I think that a lot of women, I know I would feel this way at times, is when, if I'm trying to do something that I'm really intentional on, I really like and I love and I'm passionate about, I worry that, and I think I said that with my first 10, my that first 10 seconds thing you said for me to think about is, I wish I felt more present, because I feel guilty still these days because I'm very busy and I feel like I want to chase some of my dreams, but I feel guilty that I'm not present always for all of the people, my kids and my husband and my staff and everybody, who depends on me. But I think you have to also give yourself permission that and know that if I'm happy and doing what makes me all excited, then everybody else can feel that energy as well. It helps everyone.
Yeah, look, it really does. And I think that predominantly, and you'll obviously have male listeners, and I get that, and I'm only purely talking about this from the sort of the female perspective, if you like, because that's my learned and my lived experience. But so many women I know, including myself, have just given and given and given and given and given, and it gets to the point where I think it really is our turn, and so much so that when I wrote the life list, I wanted the subheading to be the exquisite joy of becoming unapologetically selfish. And
Mm.
my publisher wouldn't let me call it that. And they said, look, no woman is going to pick up a book that expresses herself as being selfish or embracing
Yeah.
selfishness. And I thought, oh, what a load of rubbish. That's ridiculous. So I sort of did my own poll, and I went out to clients and friends and I did an anonymous survey. And I think I had like 500-600 people, women, respond. And the
Hmm.
question was, if the book, if this was the title of the book, would you buy it? And it was like 98% said no, I wouldn't buy it.
Hmm.
So I had
So they
to,
were,
the publisher was 100% right. I was
yeah.
completely wrong. Um, but this is the thing, right? It's because we are so selfless in our lives and in prioritizing others and often not putting ourselves first. This concept of being slightly selfish
Hmm.
is phenomenally insulting. And to call a woman or to tell a woman that she's being selfish by prioritizing herself, I think is an absolute travesty. And I
Yeah.
think that if we're not comfortable being a little bit more selfish, then we at least need to be a little less selfless. And we need to give ourselves permission and move away from this place of guilt.
Hmm.
No one's going to give you a gold star for being the guiltiest. And, I'm not saying, okay, everyone go abandon your kids when they're 5 and 6. My kids are in their early 20s. I've empty nested. They're all very, very happily living their own lives. I speak to them pretty much every day. I'm very close to them, love them to death and back. But it's my turn. It's my
Hmm.
bloody turn. And
Hmm.
I'm going to go and live in my palazzo in Sicily. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And they're okay with that as well. And does that mean I'm not going to be here all the time for everything? Well, of course it does. And will there be times where I may have to rush home? Well, of course there will be. But I'm not going to continue to put my life on hold um, because I'm no longer the sun that my children need to orbit around, and that gives me a phenomenal amount of freedom, and I'm embracing that.
Mm. I love that. I was going to ask you for to give a message to people who are listening that maybe are feeling a little bit afraid to take that step toward what they want to do. But I think you just nailed it there. I mean, I think that is the message, is that it's freedom to choose what you want to do, and the support behind you, and the permission, giving yourself permission, makes those baby steps not feel so difficult, and the guilt vanishes. And then you can find your palazzo in Sicily and enjoy those moments free from guilt or regret or worry.
I think that you're going to have so much more regret at the end of your life if you
Mm,
don't do some of these things now. You know, my
yeah.
kids are all in their early 20s. At some stage, they're going to probably have babies. I've got a window right now where I can go off without sort of feeling like I'm missing out on too much of, the baby stuff, for example. We need to maximize the windows that are presented to us. Also, I don't want to just sort of sit at home and do what I've always done. I have now more freedom than I've ever had, or certainly more freedom than I've had since in my early 20s. And, as midlife women, we've accumulated a phenomenal amount of intellectual property. We're often at the top of our game in terms of our professions, or in terms of running our businesses. Many of us are financially secure. Forbes calls us super consumers. We're the wealthiest, healthiest, fittest, most dynamic, energized group of midlife women ever.
Mm,
We're controlling the spending budget for 3 generations. We buy for ourselves, for our parents, and for our children often.
hmm.
And we are very, very powerful consumers. And I think we need to pivot that power that we have over brands into taking a little bit more power over our lives and our
Yeah.
destinies and what we want to do with our lives. If you're listening and you're kind of in that age bracket like me, the world is your oyster.
Mhm. Yeah. If you plan for it, and you maybe not even plan for it, but you make that life list and you take little baby steps super, super fast, maybe. But it's taking those steps, right? Those 10 seconds, those 90-second moments.
Yeah, and it is about planning for it. It is about being intentional. It's about working out which bits are most important to you and which bits you want to prioritize. It's also about, it's not just about saying, well, here's my life list and I'm going to go off and selfishly lead it. You might have a partner list, a life list
Mhm.
with your partner. So these are the things we're going to do together, but these are the things I want to do on my own. Or you might have a family life list where these are the things I want us to all do as a family. I don't give my kids presents anymore of, Christmas presents or birthday parent presents of possessions. I give them experiences, and
Mhm.
I'm involved in all of those experiences because I want to be part of it. So like I buy
Yeah,
them tickets to rock concerts or paintballing or
yeah,
go-karting or whatever, because I want us to do stuff together. So I have the family life list as well. This isn't a purely just about me.
right. Well, Kate, what a great conversation. You have given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure the listeners as well. Can you just tell me, and for everyone listening, I will have all of the links where to, follow Kate and her website and her books on the show notes. But maybe, Kate, you can just let everybody know where they can find you and learn more about what you do.
Yeah, look, that would be wonderful. My most recent book is called The Life List, and that's available globally on Amazon. My website is just my name, Kate Christie. And to follow the Palazzo journey and my midlife calls to action, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, and my handle is Kate Christie Loves.
Fantastic. Well, Kate, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know it's in the evening, your time, and I do appreciate every moment. And I actually am going to get that life list.
Awesome. Will you let me know how you go with it? And if anyone is listening and they decide to buy it, please email me. I'm constantly getting emails from all around the world from people, predominantly women, saying, well, this is what's next on my life list. And it just gives me so much joy.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again, Kate, and have a nice evening. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Enjoy your life or your palazzo in Sicily.
Thanks, Samantha.
Well, I just loved that conversation. And honestly, I was put on the spot a little bit, but I'm hoping that I was able to give you some insight that, I go through these same feelings myself. And there's something really special about speaking to a woman who has lived through heartbreak and reinvention and motherhood and grief and success and still chooses joy. And she actually chose Italy as well. And she's chosen that now is her turn. And I think what struck me the most is this idea that we're not managing time, we're investing in it. And that time isn't really the problem. The problem is often the story that we tell ourselves about why we cannot use it differently or why we can't do what we want to do. And Kate shared how watching her former husband's illness unfold, of course, changed everything for her. And that reminder that life is fragile, that later is never promised, that doors close. And if you listened really closely, you could hear how that realization became the catalyst for her life list. And I want to gently bring this back to you because maybe your palazzo is not necessarily in Sicily. Maybe it's finally starting your own business or taking that sabbatical here in Italy or moving to Italy or renovating your terrace garden like that's mine or learning Italian or booking a ticket to somewhere you've dreamed of going. But whatever it is, it really does deserve more than someday. All right, my friends, we are on to our listener questions. Question number 1. Samantha, we want to move to Italy in 2 years, but we're still paying off a mortgage at home. Should we wait until everything is perfectly aligned financially, or is there a smarter way to start planning now? Great question, because it actually talks about a couple things, your timeline to plan to move to Italy and then the financial side. So speaking of a timeline, most people think about moving to Italy for decades, but when they really start seriously thinking about the planning is usually at the 2-year mark, sometimes 1, but often it really starts to bubble at 2. And this is the time that you need to start looking at your whole picture, at your financial picture, at your immigration, where you're going to live in Italy. You don't have to make decisions immediately at that time, but you have to know that you will have to make decisions in the future. And when we're talking about your mortgage and these things that can be holding you back, I just want you to think of it in a different light, maybe from an immigration light to start with. If you are thinking of moving to Italy, for example, on an elective residency visa where your income matters and your debt matters. So what people often forget about is that they may be receiving 35,000 euros net a year in their Social Security or their pensions to qualify for the elective residency visa, but they have a 24,000 a year mortgage. That's reducing their debt by 24,000 because they want to know what your net income is. So if your question is about should you pay off the mortgage before getting a visa, then yeah. I mean, if it's an elective residency visa and it impacts your bottom line, then yes, you have to. But if it's about should you make sure everything is buttoned up at home before you actually make the move or follow that dream, well, that's a bigger decision that you have to think about for yourself, about your financial position, about what you see your life in Italy. Is it going to be long-term or part-term? But as far as it goes with a visa, then yes, financially, you have to take care of that. All right, question number 2. We are in our early 50s and thinking about a slower lifestyle in Italy, but we're worried about feeling isolated. Do people actually build community once they move? Yes, and more yes, they actually do. And I will be honest that most foreigners, probably like any, immigrant or foreigner in any country, tend to stick around their own tribe, their own people, their own language. And eventually they will, make more Italian friends and maybe blend a little bit more in the community. But that doesn't happen right at the beginning. You need people who understand you, who can support you, and that obviously you can talk to, not just with words and language, but, from shared cultural experiences or shared cultural history. This is real, and this will make your transition easier. So if you're worried about feeling isolated, what we usually hear, always actually, from people is that their social life, their connection, their community when they move to Italy is way stronger than it was back in their home country. And that's usually because everybody is on the same playing field. Everybody is sort of in the same zone, and nobody's chasing their careers or chasing, their lives like they do in a faster paced society. Question number 3. If you had to choose just one thing to focus on first when planning a move to Italy, visas, property, taxes, language, what would it be and why? Oh, good question. I had this question actually the other day on one of my consult calls. It was a good question. I always say to people that all the other stuff, where do you want to live, what kind of house, all the dreamy stuff, or the fearful stuff about taxes, or needing to learn a language, which by the way is going to take a very long time. So if you wait for that, then you're waiting kind of too long. So what I always tell them is your very first point is immigration. I know that's very practical, but that's the truth. If you cannot move to Italy legally, if you don't have EU citizenship, are not Italian dual citizen, not married to one of those, and you cannot qualify for one of the few visas available for Italy, then where you're going to live and your taxes and all of that doesn't even matter. So I think you should focus first on how, practically speaking, legally speaking, you're going to actually move to Italy. And then once that clears, once you know that, then start focusing on the other things. And typically what people will do is they'll combine both the property and the taxes at the same time, because depending on where they're going to live, they could open up certain tax benefits. So those usually need to be layered at the same time. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you of something. You don't need all of the answers right now. You just need the right questions and the space to think clearly. If this episode helped you feel more grounded or less alone, that's exactly why the show exists. You can find all of the links and the resources that I mentioned in today's episode in the show notes. And if you want to go deeper, head over to smartmoveitaly.com for more ways that we can help you make your move to Italy a whole lot easier. And if you're enjoying the show, subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with someone that is also dreaming about Italy helps more than you know. Thanks again for spending time with me. I will see you next week. Ciao for now.
Sentire Media.
This episode is brought to you by the Smart Move Italy app, your free tool for planning, moving, and thriving in Italy. Download it today on iOS and Android. Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.